Do not pass judgment on anyone unless you have talked to them one-on-one. I don't care what the story is.
Every journalist who sat across from Michael Jackson came to the table with an agenda they believed was reasonable. Most of them would have described their approach as fair, and some might have told you they genuinely respected him as an artist. Watching those interviews back now, with the distance of time and some understanding of how press coverage accumulates into narrative, what stands out isn't the cruelty of any single question, but the consistency of the pattern. He would explain something clearly and carefully, and then watch the conversation return to the same point it had started from, as though his words simply hadn't registered. This is a close look at those moments without the tabloid framing around them, focused on what was actually said, what he actually answered, and what the exchanges reveal about the gap between who he was and what the press had already decided he should be.
Oh boy, sometime after Thriller, around Off the Wall Thriller, sometime
And what did you
there.
think? I mean,
It's in my family. My father said it's on his side. I can't control it. I don't understand. I mean, it makes me very sad.
February of 1993 brought the Oprah Winfrey television event that drew nearly 90 million viewers in the United States alone, placing it among the most watched broadcasts in American television history. Michael opened up about vitiligo, the medical condition that causes the body's immune system to destroy its own pigment-producing cells, leaving irregular, depigmented patches across the skin. Running on his father's side of the family, the condition was something he said he didn't fully understand, and that made him deeply sad. Makeup was the practical tool he used for evening out those blotches, making his complexion consistent enough for life in public, not a transformation or a disguise of any kind. That explanation sat on the table plainly and without defensiveness.
You had to come in, or you felt you had to come in through the kitchen.
I've been doing it for years. In many lobbies, I've never seen the front door. I've been running for my life like that, hiding, getting away. You can't go that way because they're over there. Well, let's go this way. Pretend we're going that way, and we'll go that way. Somebody say, hold on, stop. This person deserves their privacy. You are not allowed to go there. I go around the world dealing with running and hiding. I can't take a walk in the park. I can't go to the store. I have to hide in a room. You feel like you're in prison.
What came back was a follow-up question asking whether he was deliberately taking something to change the color of his skin, which treated his medical account as a suspicious claim requiring confirmation before it could be believed. His response redirected to Michelangelo, and the idea that when you genuinely admire someone's creative life, the meaningful question is what drove them to become who they became. Not the surface-level observations that get reached for when the actual substance of a person goes unconsidered. The crowd responded, the show moved forward, but the question itself had already revealed exactly what he was navigating every time cameras were in the room. Barbara Walters sat across from him around the same period and covered similar terrain with similar results. Michael walked her through what the tabloid nickname Wacko Jacko actually cost him personally, tracing it back to an English tabloid that had invented the label and making clear in simple terms that his name was Jackson, not Jacko, and that the distinction mattered because he was a person whose feelings registered when he got described that way in public.
People still are not, they don't feel they've heard everything about the whiteness of your skin, and that it's not somehow a choice on your part. It is a decision on your part some way, the way you look. Where does it come from?
I think it creates itself, nature.
Do you wish you were the color you were again?
Do I wish I was the
That
You have to
color.
ask nature that. I love black. I love
Do you wish
black.
you were that way?
I envy her because she can tan and I can't.
Walters acknowledged the cruelty of it and pivoted immediately to the suggestion that his clothing, his appearance, and his overall presentation were effectively drawing the press's attention, framing his own visibility as the source of the problem he was describing. His answer was brief and direct. He liked living the way he lived and dressing the way he dressed, and if the press showed up anyway, the minimum expectation was that they write accurate things and treat him with basic human consideration. When Walters questioned whether that expectation was even within journalism's professional scope, the exchange became difficult to watch, sitting directly against everything Michael had already described about his actual daily life. Years of entering venues through kitchen doors and service entrances, never once seeing the front lobby of a hotel where he was staying, moving through cities by faking one direction while the paparazzi scrambled to follow and slipping out another, unable to walk in a park, unable to go to a store, running through the world in a way that felt less like freedom and more like containment. None of that was about how he dressed. All of it was about what pop music celebrity had made him into, and the entertainment press had participated actively in building it. Even during the Jackson 5 years before the solo career and the fame that followed, that instinct to correct something wrong when he saw it showed up without hesitation. A television host made a dismissive remark about his younger brother Randy's habit of collecting rocks, and Michael stepped in immediately, telling the host plainly that a kid with a rock collection was doing something worth respecting, not something ridiculous. The correction was calm and quick, delivered on camera in front of a live audience. And in someone that young, it pointed clearly to who he was already becoming. The Diane Sawyer interview in 1995, conducted with Lisa Marie Presley not long after their marriage, produced footage that still comes up when people discuss uncomfortable television from that decade.
I just want to get this straight. You are not taking anything to change the color of your skin.
Oh, God, no.
You did not purposely.
We're trying to control it, and using makeup evens it out because it makes blotches on the skin, and I have to even out my skin. But you know what's funny? Why is that so important? I'm a great fan of art. I love Michelangelo. If I had a chance to talk to him or read about him, I would want to know about what inspired him to become who he is, not about who he went out with last night or why he decided to sit out in the sun so long. What's wrong with, I mean, that's what's important to me.
Pre-submitted audience questions were played on air during the broadcast, including one asking directly and explicitly whether the couple was sexually intimate. Both of them absorbed it with more steadiness than the question had earned. Sawyer's own approach to Michael's skin was the more durable problem, returning to the idea that his appearance reflected some kind of deliberate personal decision rather than a documented medical condition he had already addressed publicly across multiple years. The diagnosis existed. The explanation had been given before. Both Michael and Lisa Marie later said they regretted doing the interview, and watching the footage back now, that regret is entirely legible. Martin Bashir's documentary, Living with Michael Jackson, opened territory that most television coverage of him had never attempted. He spoke about his father's specific comments during adolescence, the observations about the width of his nose, the comparisons that left him feeling something was wrong with his face from an early age. Cousins would gesture at his acne when they saw him, and those moments sent him to his bedroom to cry. An airport memory stayed with him for years.
Wonderful, loving night. What did it mean to you that Elizabeth Taylor came out for you?
You're not doing no interview. No interview. Gene, you just gonna walk with you. Gonna walk with you, Gene.
No,
gonna walk with
it's
you.
a great night. Thank you for everything. Oh, it's a great night. But were you pleased that Elizabeth came out for you?
Jeannie, please. Gene, no interview. Just walk with him, darling.
A woman had just finished recognizing the Jackson 5 with visible excitement and then looked at Michael directly and asked out loud what had happened, as though she had expected someone different to be standing there. Michael said he could have died right there from the humiliation of it. All of that came out openly, without the protective distance that years of hostile press coverage might reasonably have produced. And then Bashir moved directly into a list of alleged procedures: cheek implants, a constructed dimple in the chin, enlarged lips, reconstructed eyelids. Michael denied every item on the list, called the claims false and made up, and responded with the visible frustration of someone who had spent years watching speculation get presented as documented fact, while his denials counted for nothing. The stretch when the Jackson family pulled him back into group work, despite his solo career having become the obvious and unambiguous center of his professional life, produced interviews that were technically cooperative but clearly hollow.
Would he turn around and say, Michael Jackson molested me, if it weren't true?
Because parents have power over children. They feel they have to do what their parents say. But money is the root of all evil. This isn't him. This is not him.
So you don't think this comes from him, this comes from his parents?
No, this is not him. No, I know his heart.
Answers arrived when questions were asked. Nothing behind them was present. That absence communicated more than anything said out loud. Los Angeles police arrested Michael in 2003 in connection with allegations that investigators later examined and found insufficient evidence to support. The charges closed, but the physical experience of the arrest was something he described in specific terms. The handcuffs applied behind his back at an angle he believed was deliberately chosen to press against an existing back injury, causing pain severe enough to interrupt his sleep for an extended period. When the matter went to trial, the jury came back not guilty on all 10 criminal counts. Michael walked out of that courthouse looking like someone who had survived something rather than someone who had been vindicated, and the coverage reflected exactly that quality without appearing troubled by the distinction. Acquittal didn't return what the preceding years had cost him, and no one standing outside that building seemed to expect that it would. Even after the verdicts were in, some interviewers kept returning to an earlier civil settlement, treating a financial decision made under enormous public pressure as though it were functionally equivalent to an admission of guilt. His legal team stepped in during at least one interview to close that line of questioning on the record. The underlying assumption in those questions, that an innocent person would never have paid anything, fell apart under any honest consideration of what it actually meant to be navigating civil litigation as the most recognizable entertainer on earth inside a press environment that had already decided how the story ended. Near the end of his career, a journalist approached him at a public event after his team had already declined the interview request multiple times and communicated the refusal clearly.
They manhandled me very roughly with the handcuffs, the way they tied them too tight behind my back.
Behind your back?
Yeah, and they put it in a certain position knowing that it's going to hurt and affect my back. Now I can't move. It keeps me from sleeping at night.
Multiple people around him said no. The journalist kept going anyway, walking alongside him and directing questions his way while the people with him worked to move him through. No interview happened. That outcome was correct. But the number of explicit refusals required to arrive at it said something about the full shape of his relationship with the press, which had never been organized around what he wanted to say or how he wanted to be seen. Taken across the full arc of his public life, the pattern remained consistent. He explained things with clarity and with patience that routinely exceeded what the moment had earned, and what came back was almost always the same question in a slightly different form, as though his answer had been provisional rather than real. The vitiligo carried documented medical history behind it. The pain from the arrest was something he felt in his sleep. The airport memory was a humiliation he had carried for decades. The not guilty verdicts were the conclusions of a real jury after a full trial. And the gap between those facts and the version of him constructed in the tabloid press was not something any explanation, however clear or however patient, was ever going to close. That much was clear to him. He explained anyway. The cameras kept rolling.